A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangu Shampagi. And tonight, on a day when fuel prices at the retail market has hit 4,070 shillings at Vivo, which runs under the brand Shell, still runs under the brand Shell, and 4,060 shillings at Total fuel stations. Also on a day when members of the ruling National Resistance Movement, the 317 who voted to amend the constitution and remove age limit, celebrate with some of the phrases they used at the celebrations. I'm just trying to find them. Yes, Museveni non-stop, 317 age limit MPs, Museveni non-stop, align and arrive, 7 for all, 7-year presidential term limit. The celebrations in Kiboga, which also launched the campaign for the referendum that will seek the approval of the extension of the term of members of parliament for an extra 2 years. We will continue a discussion on this, on the Fourth Estate, on the security situation in the country, asking the question, are Ugandans being given the answers they need over the security situation? Just this morning, a body was discovered in Nazareth zone of a young man bound at the back, the hands bound at the back. As there is some speculation over whether he was, Nazareth zone is somewhere in Chanja, in Kawempe division in Kampala. He was found bound, and stories of disappearances of people that still go unaccounted, unexplained. You have Susan Magara, who is still missing up to now. Are Ugandans being given the right answers? To discuss those and other issues tonight, let me start my introduction with Onapito Ekomoloit, Legal and Corporate Affairs Director at Narborough is AB InBev. Ona, always a pleasure to be with you on the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Nicholas Opio is a human rights activist and works with Chapter 4. Nicholas, very nice to have you.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening to all of you who are tuned in and to my fellow panelists.
Emilian Kaima is the police spokesperson. Very nice to have you, sir.
Proud to be here. Good evening, viewers.
And Angelo Izama. He's a journalist and many other things. It doesn't need a lot of introduction when it comes to the Fourth Estate. Gentlemen, I want to start with the police spokesperson and ask a very straight question. The security situation in the country, why are you as government not able to give a consistent, coherent explanation on what is going on? Disappearances, murders, disappearances for ransom, murders sometimes for ransom, break-ins into people's homes or their vehicles, carjackings. What exactly is going on?
Well, crime happens, and many times we intervene. We've caught some of the suspected people in these crimes, arraigned them in the courts of laws. Some have been got, some have not been got. Cases of disappearances, missing persons also rise, even murders. And we continue to engage as we follow the prosecution bit, but also to engage communities in as far as keeping close to security agencies is concerned, to provide security for all.
As a police spokesperson and the police as an institution, Mr. Kaima, what explanation do you have to Ugandans that you stumble from iron bar hitmen to people killing mobile money vendors, to the wave of shootings of Muslim clerics, to the murders of women, rape and murder of women in Entebbe and Nansana areas, and now to where we are, where people are disappearing and nobody knows where they're going, who is taking them?
For each of these, we have explained the different waves. At some point, I think late 2015, many taxi drivers, many cab drivers were being attacked, targeted. You remember the case?
I've left out so many categories. I've left out the murders in Luengo where people were burrowing through homes. I left the killings in Bushenyi, in Chiruhura and other places. We haven't even talked about child sacrifice. That was a few years ago. But you stumble from one wave to the next wave, to the next wave, to the next wave, and you do not see a consistent explanation from the authorities or a serious concern that Ugandans, even watching us tonight, are not sure whether they'll be driving to their home like happened to Susan Magara, and she's made to disappear. Nobody knows where she is.
In some cases, we have broken through and we have explained this. In others, they remain hard to break through. But like we said, the wave of attacking cab drivers was stamped out. The wave of women in Katavi and Nansana, some county, was stopped. And many that are suspected to have gotten involved into this were taken to court. And we are in court. Courts will determine the culpability and the penalties accordingly. When we do this and we explain each of these, because they're different, they're not even the same. When you check, for example, in Katavi, there is a gentleman, now the late, who was murdered and the body thrown in the, if I'm not mistaken, Rubirizi, in some water body in Rubirizi, and had been picked from Mukono. And we found out that there is a lady suspect now, together with the two other men and enforcers, who are, this lady would go into pubs, into happening places, and look at men who probably have money and pretend to be in love with them, so they hook her up and they end up dying. That was stopped. Others were students who were, two students were killed, and we found two people who are related, and there is sufficient evidence to point to them. Question is, why does it happen the way it happens within this period? Well, these are questions that should be asked. But the suspects in these cases, we are taken to court.
How can we be sure that...
And we are tussling it out.
How can we be sure that the suspects that you claim to have are the suspects that you actually... because it appears that at some stage, it is the criminal networks that mutate to dodge your dragnet. That it's not you being able to stamp out the web of crime. They just choose what they want to do, as and when and where and against whom.
No, I doubt that, because in some cases we have secured convictions, and you know, securing a conviction means you have to have a watertight case for you to prove before a trial judge that this is A and not B that was involved in the commission of this crime. In many cases we have done this. In some cases, even with those who actually did it, you may not prove if the evidence you have does not pin this person 100%. Yet they are the ones who did this. And this calls for many things, really. Many things. One, the capacity of the police to investigate this, employing various methods, including scientific methods of investigation. We are in some way or the other, we lack in this, and there are mechanisms to upgrade these systems. Late last year, the Inspector General of Police, together with the first Prime Minister, General Ali, and the Inspector General of Police, and others, launched the construction of a modern forensic laboratory here. That we think, if it's ready, it will improve, it will add value onto our investigation. Right now we depend on what we have.
Mr. Kaima, you, the IGP, launched famously what you called human CCTV cameras. 11 million crime preventers across the country. 11 million crime preventers. You have invested in CCTV cameras, you have invested in a lot of arsenal that we see on the roads. What is not reducing, what is not seen, is that this investment has bled the taxpayer. It is not reducing crime across the country.
Well, we do not have yet the CCTV cameras, as you say. It's something that's planned.
No, the human CCTV cameras, do those exist or not? The human ones.
There's the Chogam cameras
in
that
my
were planted
view,
in town.
Yes, the ones of Chogam are there. Some still work, others don't work, but Yes, they have added value, in my view, really.
Mm.
They've added value, but we all would want to see a crime-free society. But criminals keep raising their ugly heads. It's our duty as security agencies, the police taking the lead, but it's also the duty of everyone to partner with us.
Okay, I'm keen to bring in the other members of the panel to broaden this discussion. But when you said in the case of the gentleman from Rubirizi, who was murdered in Rubirizi, I think he owned an X-Trail car and he was murdered because they wanted to take his car, and the suspected girlfriend and the other people who said belong to the forces. How do you reconcile, especially in the question of disappearances, when members of security forces are also involved in disappearing people? And I'll give you two examples. The Reverend Baka, the journalist, for a whole 4 months, everybody is running around trying to find out what happened to him. His family, his colleagues, his employers, anybody who knew him. He disappears for 4 months. And after 4 months, somehow he appears in a court and is sent to Luzera, formally. Charles Etukuyi of the New Vision disappears from in front of his office for 5 days. Nobody has given an explanation. And then afterwards, he's dumped back. Now, if you have security agencies acting like that and criminals acting alongside, who do you convince among the people watching us that they can be safe?
Well, that's a big egg on the country called Uganda. And we need to determine really, what do we do if this happens? What do we do? For example, with the Charles, with the Reverend Baka. Do we just make a comment? Do we analyze that only? Maybe we've got to take it further than that and say, okay, let's investigate. Now you know your captors. Because an arrest, the police arrest, the way we do this is known, and we'll take you through the procedures. If we don't do that on site, we'll do it later. Now when it's done like that, it leaves a lots of questions and lots of doubts, and probably some Ugandans are going to feel afraid of a crime that may happen to them, and that alone is insecurity.
Yeah, because I was asking myself, the relatives and the family and colleagues and employers of Reverend Baka have spent 4 months looking for him. They haven't found him. Then the relatives, friends, and family of Susan
They
Magara.
actually found him.
Yes,
They actually
Susan
found him.
Magara. Wake up one day and she's gone. Then Baka appears from the government. Susan Magara hasn't appeared. Nobody knows. So, in that state, where do you start from? And I'd like to invite the other gentlemen
And
to
the
join this
others who have
discussion.
also appeared. For example, the young man whose wedding is next week. You followed that story?
Yes, I heard he appeared at Kira Road Police.
No, he appeared somewhere in Entebbe, in a friend's home, and was reconnected back to the family. And we were wondering what
Police
exactly
found
happened.
him.
So many things. So these ramifications have to be analyzed here, so we agree on what do we do next. It should never be the arm of the state to do anything that's unlawful. It should never be.
But it's happening,
If it, well,
isn't it?
if it happens, then it should be investigated to its logical conclusion.
Does it get
Like it
investigated?
I would really call upon it to record statements, because he now knows where he was, he knows who his captors are. So we start it from there. If we don't do, then you ask us, why didn't you do that?
Nicholas,
Yep.
you've been involved following some of these as a human rights lawyer and an activist. Does it worry you that we move from one phase of crime to the next, to the next, to the next? Do you think that the people responsible for giving answers are giving sufficient answers?
Well, I think what even worries me more is that when you listen to the police spokesperson and many other security agencies, including his boss, General Kale Kaihura, you never feel assured. I think what Ugandans need to hear is an assurance. There's no assurance. There's an attempt to explain things. You can always find explanations. But in matters of security, people need to hear a confident police force saying, this is what we are doing to stop A, B, C, D. You can blame a girlfriend, you can blame whatever it is, but I don't think they are reassuring enough. I think that we are in a situation where if you discuss the security situation in isolation, you can miss out on the big picture. The truth is, there's a bigger, wider political concern. And the use of the security agencies or the failures within them are only a manifestation of that failure. And then in specific reference to my good friend Afande Kaima here, the police force has suffered from two things in my view. The first is that there's just a complete collapse of hierarchies. The police has been overrun. Many police officers, if you ask Afande Kaima, don't even know the real structure of the police force because it just keeps morphing every day. You have a police force that is overrun by other security agencies. Charles, you can walk to a police station and give orders to a policeman. They will obey because nobody is sure who their bosses are. Nobody is sure who is going to give instructions. So there's a real collapse in the hierarchies and control structure of the police force. And people within the force have taken advantage of that, but also people from outside of the force have taken advantage of that. In the case of Reverend Barker, we now know where he was being kept because we were on their trail for over 2 months. Reverend Barker was being kept at SIU Chireka, a facility that previously was run by SIU commanders. It is now run by an SFC officer working for CMI, whose name we have. When we zeroed down on them and discovered that Reverend Barker was being kept there and demanded to see him, he just refused to give us access, and we gave him 2 days. And before we knew it, Reverend Barker, on Valentine's Day, stealthily appeared before court. No legal representation, nothing, quietly, and remanded to Uzira because the police have been overrun by another agency. That's one. The second one is that you have a complete commercialization of security. Charles, you can hire a policeman to do your bidding. You can hire, everybody now can just hire a policeman to do their bidding. Every senior rich businessman in town has, like what they used to say in South Sudan, who is your general, said, who is your police chief? Because many people do that. And that has bred criminality. In the case of disappearances, I don't think this is going to end. I think that it is just a case of a complete systematic breakdown in police structures and systems. The police have got to admit that, and I think recommit to Ugandans to reform and restructure the system.
Or you're giving them a task they can't?
I mean, Afande Kaima and I here were involved in a police review exercise. An exercise supposed to have revamped the police force in the same way the army was revamped. He knows what happened best to that process. Completely abandoned. The police needs a serious reform.
Ona, let me come to you. And this is a question we've discussed off the air. The fact that the people who are supposed to be giving answers, because with all due respect to Emilian Kaima here, he's a spokesperson for the police, primarily doing public relations for the police. We've discussed. The IGP doesn't give interviews he doesn't have control over. The Minister of Internal Affairs, Jejo Odong, I doubt he has appeared on any radio talk show that's going to ask him the hard questions, or TV talk show, or given an interview where he can give the answers that Ugandans need. The Deputy Minister for Internal Affairs, Obiga Kania, hasn't spoken to anybody to explain anything. The Minister for Security, the Minister for Defense. Is this normal? You are a member of parliament, you serve the president. Is this normal?
You have a police spokesman to answer those questions. You can ask me a civilian. But look, I just wanted to make a comment on the general security situation. I think for long I've been one of the doubting Thomases about the criticism of lack of security in the country. I've sort of insisted that I think the country has for long been ahead of the curve in terms of countries that are insecure. I sort of don't want to eat my words because I know a lot of things are happening now. In fact, what worries most is that this epidemic is spreading outside Kampala, which you would understand if it happens in the city. Across the world, cities generally are full of crime, but now you're having up-country places like Soroti becoming the epicenter of crime. These are sort of the poverty capital of the country in many respects, but they're also getting affected. Just last night, one popular young man in Soroti was shot and robbed, and that's almost a daily occurrence. So the police certainly has its hands full. But it's also not surprising that there's a sort of a melting pot in terms of the infighting or reported infighting among the security organs and then the upsurge in crime. I believe the criminals are, naturally they are smart people. They are watching. They know who they should be fearing, and if these people are constrained by what's going around their lives, the criminals have a free rein. And maybe some people are even trying to use crime to undermine their colleagues in the security system. Say, look, that one has failed. And if you have some criminals, as evidence has shown, who are controlled by, by security individuals, they can incite them, go and do some stuff, just to show that this guy is totally useless. So it's quite a scary story. But also there is a question of the societal breakdown. You have a breakdown characterized by joblessness, and yet there's consumerism on the rise. A lot of young people are in urban and peri-urban areas, clearly with no clear source of income, yet they have the attractions of modern living that we all know. They want smartphones, they want to watch, they want to have a drink. And so how do you deal with this situation? I think the police is getting overwhelmed by this kind of situation, where there is a lot of joblessness in this city and many urban areas. You can't define how people just exist. You can't define how they exist.
You responded to that. Can you come back to my question? Who should be giving the answers? Why are they not giving the answers?
Well, the government has to give the answers. Who else should? The police spokesman is here.
Don't you think that...
I think if they are not giving the answers, it means they have been overwhelmed. There's no other explanation.
Yes, but rather than sacrifice Kaima, don't you think that his superiors should be able to give answers?
Yeah, I think the superiors have also been overwhelmed by the situation I've described.
I'll come back to
you. You have a huge army of young people.
Yeah.
Most of the time, these are the same people the politicians run to during election time. And now there is no election. What do you offer them? And so they are trying to survive, and there are no clear answers for them how to get them out of crime.
Angela, you have invested a lot of time in studying and analyzing and advising on security situations, not just here, but also in the region and elsewhere. This is an area you have studied extensively. Are we dealing with ordinary criminality or something else?
Well, I was explaining to the police spokesperson that these are not problems that the police should be called to solve. I mean, you can arrest criminals, and what the police offers the public then is the potential for deterrent. That if you are involved in criminal activity, you know, the law catches up with you, you might end up in jail. But that's really the extent of what the police can do. The problems that Ona was referring to, Onapito was referring to just now, those are in our field what we call human security, how a country is organized. And you know, when you think about the pillars of what constitutes good human security in Uganda, I think we are really falling off the rails. You've got unprecedented urban migration, so from the periphery of villages into towns and peri-urban areas, and then there's a huge wave into this greater Kampala area. You've got economic problems which are deepening every day. I mean, people talk about joblessness, but I think it's more than that. There are many people who have got 3 jobs and they're still unemployed. You know, there is very little value that is coming from their jobs. But mainly, I think the term that I would apply to Uganda is the one that is in the book cover of Ali Kirunda Chibejinja, that there's a crisis of confidence. Police can't offer hope to a country that is, you know, that's what someone was referring to as, you know, an assurance, and Nicholas, you're referring to as an assurance. People don't really have a sense of where the country is going, what is expected out of them. 2 generations ago, you know, you came into school, there was certainty. You know, you got out of school, there's potential for a job, you had a government salary, you had a pension. There was a system that was working. I think these are the questions for Ugandan leaders to consider seriously. Unfortunately, the political situation doesn't seem to be the kind that we can look for good answers. But you know, I invite other well-meaning Ugandans to really reflect deeply. And the difference between the disappearances you see today and the ones in, say, 1982. Was in 1982 you had just come out of a war of liberation. 79, there were contending armed forces. The Bote government had come in, tried to stamp out their enemies. That was state-inspired
the rebellion
violence.
in
State-inspired violence. The one we're seeing today is resident in this complex social and economic problems. It's not so much something the state has deliberately created. In fact, I think it's wrong to look to the security agencies for any kind of resolution. The light must be shone on what the country do to get back on track, to offer young people hope, to create a system of expectation that things will get better, even if there are challenges today. There's in the interest of full disclosure, so I sit on the board of Chapter 4.
He's my boss.
Yeah, we spent some time looking at the human rights violations in Uganda over time. There in Golobi, actually across from Silver Springs, there used to be a detention house called Argentina House. It's on Neptune Avenue, plot number 17. So if you live there, that used to be a torture chamber. Now, the reason why it was called Argentina House was because in 1982, the military junta in Argentina had found a way of dealing with their political opponents. And they're the ones who actually gave the language that the Nicholas Opios use in human rights work called disappearances. Basically, they would get their opponents, either chop them up and throw them in acid, and they completely erase evidence of they existed, or one of their favorite things was to take people, tie stones on their feet, take them on the ocean and drop them. Argentina, at that time, was such a grave site that it coined the word disappearances in human rights language. Argentina House here in Golobi was a place, if you read Justice Arthur Oda's report on the same, people gave testimony that when you went to Argentina House, you knew you were done. So if you survived there, you're done. If you are arrested and taken to Naguru, a place called a public what? Public safety union. Of course, there's no public safety about it.
It's like the safe houses of
the
90s.
Yeah, you might, if you had gone to like the public safety unit in Naguru, that was the second tier. You might survive there because you could be transferred to CPS, or you would end up here in this building here, Nile Mansions. If you are arrested by the civilian police, you are safe. Because it meant that you'd end up in Luzira, and Luzira was a heaven. If you went to Luzira, you are heaven. You are safe.
Even today, I see a lot of suspects crying to go to Luzira.
Yeah,
yes.
But this that was state-inspired violence because of grave insecurities in there. So we want to separate the two things. Criminal activity and insecurity are interrelated, but they're not the same.
Okay.
One is something that has to be dealt with by political leaders.
Gentlemen, can we pick this up after a very short commercial break? We'll be right back in a moment. You're still watching the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing growing insecurity in the country and asking the question, are Ugandans getting the right answers they need to be getting from those who should be giving those answers? And I want to come back to you, Emilian Kaima, the police spokesperson. How do you explain the absence of the people who should be explaining these things? You're a spokesperson, yes, but your IGP, your minister, the Minister for Internal Affairs, the Deputy Minister for Internal Affairs, the Minister for Security should be giving these answers. Because when it escalates to a certain level, when I was telling you, it spread beyond Kampala. And Angelo used the word crisis of confidence. When are they available to give those answers?
The Inspector General of Police is very available. He last spoke to the media, or to the nation, if I must say, last week.
There's a difference, Apande Kaima, between issuing a statement and availing yourself to answer questions.
He personally did have...
He gave a press conference
yes,
in Naguru, yes, he did.
Yes. And he largely spends most of his time in the communities trying to appreciate.
That space he controls. I appreciate that.
Yes, yes.
That space he controls.
So on
he
issue of
controls
availability.
what he says. He controls who asks him what and what he answers them. But he ought to be giving Ugandans answers with questions that Ugandans ask him.
Well, I do not know how you view this, but in our view, from his docket, we think he answers these questions when these questions are asked.
And we are telling you because we watch you
Yes.
as a police. We're watching you from the outside. And we're saying
Exactly.
that you're not providing consistent answers, you're not providing coherent answers, you're not providing answers that comfort Ugandans, that the police is either in charge or the entire security structure is in charge of what is going on, and they can go to their beds and sleep comfortable, that they'll wake up the next morning and run to go where they want to go. Yesterday, I think the Attorney General in the Kingdom of Toro, Titus, if they was rushing for a meeting in Fort Portal. 4:30 a.m., his car was jacked as he was getting out of his house. The week before, about a month before, Ekalungar, the guy from Case Clinic, is driving to go and bank money at his workplace. He doesn't get back home. He doesn't get back to his workplace. He doesn't get back to, he ends up dead. And all these other people who have either disappeared or been murdered, some have been found in their homes. They need answers, and those answers need to be coming from somebody, with all due respect, sir, higher than yourself, that can give that kind of assurance that says, we know what's going on, we're investigating what's going on, we are finding the people who are doing this. If you're driving to Nigeria, if you're driving to Chanja, this Ekalungar was found on the roadside, was burnt on the roadside with a heap of wood on Entebbe Road. This other young lady was picked from when she was just about to get to her home. I mean, there needs to be answers that can put all this together and say, we are studying a pattern, why aren't we getting that? Why won't we get that from?
In the issue of Ekalunga, we know what has been done. Finding those that did what they did, having trained him right from the hospital where he was working. We see an inside hand. All of these will be argued. I think the question you're asking is bigger than that. Why does it happen? Why do they do this? And in our view, like Angelo says, there is a moral question in this country for the actors, for all of us. Pointing fingers is done many times, but for all of us, what is our role? Look at the family.
There's a moral question, sir.
Look
There's a moral question, sir. Is there a moral responsibility?
Of course there is.
Who is taking that responsibility?
When I wear this uniform, it's not just for showbiz, it's for delivering a mandate, which we try as much as we can to do, and we do, in terms of, one, the protection and detection and stopping crime from happening. But when it happens, the investigation with a view of prosecution. IGP recently was speaking to us, and he said something on 22nd, 23rd, 24th. We had an IAPCO organs meeting in Entebbe, and he said something. Of course, they are trying at
IAPCO is East African Police Chief.
Eastern African Police Chiefs Organization Corporation, where directors or chiefs of CID training, counterterrorism meet to discuss these things, transnational organized crime, and how this happens, and what we need to do. And the IGP said something that clicked my mind. Says, criminals need only one chance to commit their crime. We, in security, need 100% to give assurances, to protect and deliver on our mandate, and people, those who consume our services, will feel safe. Question is,
can they? In the current circumstances, can you tell Ugandans watching you now that they can sleep comfortably knowing that they'll wake up tomorrow and everything will be okay?
Well, we say,
where can you give that?
This is what we say. This is what we say, and we have said it consistently, that we do this work, but we need your hand as well, for us to be
That's
together,
not assuring at all.
for us to be together, to be able to deliver on this. And what we do in the police, the community policing aspect, the neighborhood watch, simple. Where we live, and you live in that garrison, I think it's not very safe for you to just surround yourself with walls and you think you are very safe. You know your neighbor. If you know your neighbor and there is communication, there is information sharing, you get to know the kind of security concerns in your area.
I
You work with the
would
police.
throw that question
And
back
there,
at
yeah.
you. Which Ugandans haven't done that? Can we start from there? Which Ugandans haven't looked out for each other? Every village, I think, every neighborhood in this town is on a WhatsApp group. They have local police on that group. They have created vigilante groups. I think outside of the official security, Ugandans are doing whatever they can to try and keep themselves safe. The reality is we are not finding ourselves safe, even after taking every possible precaution. And the question is, who is going to provide those answers? Who is providing those answers? Why are they not providing those answers?
From our docket, we are providing those answers that are within.
You're flogging.
our mandate.
Look, I think, Charles, one of the challenges, of course, now we have already said with the security organs have is perception. I mean, there's a perception that they are caught up in fighting and what have you, much as they are doing their best. Ideally, in this situation, there should be changes in the leadership of the security, I mean, especially policing and internal security and all this, just for the sake of restoring some sense of feeling that these organs, not just for the ordinary, I believe even for the people who are within these organs, they must be feeling a sense of paralysis and self-doubt and all this. And in any organization,
It's not too long ago when
in
there were
any-
changes. We have,
in
a
any
new,
orga-
we have a new Director General of Internal Security Organization. We have a new Minister for Security. We have a new Minister for Internal Affairs. Two new ministers for
you
Internal
can, you
Affairs.
can,
They've
make,
been
you
changes.
can make changes every
And
other day if you wish,
the
so long
AGP
as
makes changes almost every. I don't know the frequency. There are changes in the leadership structure of the police at every level.
Yeah, but
and I'm not trying to put this responsibility to the police. Like Angelo said, it is a crisis of confidence, not just in the police, but in the entire security system. So
yeah,
whoever
but
is
Charles, I'm
responsible-
saying these are well-meaning Ugandans like the rest of us. But I mean, if they are put on unnecessary defensive, they are human, no? They will not function at their best. So I think they need to be saved from themselves in many respects, you know.
I think the
And
point that I think
you are
that
putting a lot of blame on people, and then of course the whole facilitation of the police in particular. I don't believe the way the Ugandan police is facilitated can deliver the kind of service we expect from them.
And I agree with you
They can't.
entirely.
They can't.
One of the things that one could change, for sure, is triple the salaries of constables and mid-level. In fact, the entire police. You need to just one day wake up and increase their salaries, because you have to protect them from their,
They live in deplorable conditions which do not even facilitate
that's
one
a-
of
This is
low
why I
hanging
disagree.
fruit.
That's why I disagree on 2 points. The police budget under Kale Kaihura has grown over tenfold. The money given to the police force to deliver on its mandate has grown tenfold from what was about 10 years ago. When Afande Katumba Wamala was IGP, he was begging for cars for people to help it. The police now, in terms of what it has at its disposal, has a whole lot more. The question is, how do we prioritize? What are the main expenditures that we are actually using this money for? Because you see, you can't pay people enough money. Okay, nobody is going to have enough money. It is true that they're living in deplorable conditions.
certainly
But the truth
400,000
The truth
is not enough money.
the truth is, it is not because
That's
the police
right.
doesn't have enough money. It is just the way the money available to them is being used. That's one. Second point that I want to perhaps disagree a little bit with Angelo is that we have state-inspired disappearances in this country. It hasn't stopped with the past regimes. We have done several cases of state-inspired disappearances. So you have both state-inspired disappearances and the rest that Angelo actually describes. And I'll give you an example of a lady who used to work on this TV station, abducted, broad daylight, on the streets, outside the studios here. Abducted, Gertrude Witware. She was abducted, and the strange thing is, after 18 hours of being in the hands of her abductors, she was abandoned in the middle of nowhere in pitch darkness. And guess who was the first to turn up? to our rescue, the IGP. He turns up, puts her at the 11th floor of Hotel Africana and keeps her there for weeks until she gets out. So you have state-inspired disappearances. And this is both a function, and the reason is quite simple. If you want to understand how this is working, go and look at the case docket now of the ICD, International Crimes Division. There's a sad collusion between the police force, investigations, and people they view as political opponents. So you have people who are arrested for whatever reason or suspicion, maybe a girlfriend who lured people into their death traps. You charge them in a court of law. When a judge begins to ask you for evidence, what do? You withdraw those charges and then charge them at the ICD or in the court, in the general court martial. If you look at those case dockets, they're just growing by the day. Those are the kind of people who disappeared in the hands of the state, and they're being kept for whatever reason they keep them, in detention. The third point really is about the nature of our security agencies. In the hearts of Afande Kaima, does it believe that is accountable to the Ugandan people and works for their benefit? Does the IGP believe that his bosses are Angelo, his grandmother in the village, my mother in the village, or Honor's uncles in the village? No. That's precisely the reason why they don't get a sense of responsibility to come and tell you what's happening. They send my good friend here, Pua Kaima, who has to guess. I don't even think he has the full facts at his disposal. Sometimes you can see him struggling over his statement. They just don't feel a sense of accountability, both at the technical level of the IGP and the group, but also at a political level.
What explains that? Why?
Let me jump in here, because I didn't intend to undermine the cases where political conflicts have led to human rights violations in Uganda. I mean, Nick is right. Even when you look at the Human Rights Commission's reports, it's a serious problem with violations by state agents. Okay, but the criticism that is valid in the case of Uganda, and this often comes from the NRM's political opponents, is that the police force over the last 15 years has become basically the armed wing of the ruling party. So it's become a protection force.
Yeah. It's a political militia.
Yeah. Regime policing is that term they use.
And once they withdraw to that role, they leave room for criminals. What several years ago I described to Charles as the black market for justice now.
No, and while you said something, Angela, because of the doubling in politics, some people who at the right time are useful politically are also criminals. So now the police loses the moral authority to hold them because they were useful at election time when they are working together with the police. Then after elections they become criminals.
Gentlemen, let me ask this question. Where do the other security agencies come in? Chieftains of military intelligence has been arresting people, so you can't say that its job is limited to military intelligence.
By the way,
internal security organization, where do they fall in? Because we can sacrifice the police, we can hang the police all we want, but the question is, you have an entire security apparatus. Who does it work for? Why is it absent?
It's not absent, actually. And to be fair to Emilian's colleagues, who they are professionals who are working day and night. They are in internal security from the level of the village up to the top. People forget that Uganda still is in a conflict zone. We have conflicts in DRC. We have an implosion of an entire country in South Sudan. We have insecurity that is carried over from the coast. These are not neighbors that are stable, particularly Kenya. We've got terrorism and an open corridor there, ferrying arms, into Karamoja and other areas. Transnational crime, is with us. Just go to Butabika and see how many, kids from innocent Ugandan families are ended up, with serious drug addiction problems. There are agencies that are involved, of course, in the protection of the state, but here in front of us every day is just one conflict between the NRM and its opponents. The police is caught in between because the police is seen as the civilian answer. They are in the front lines of holding down what the NRM really perceives to be the real challenge,
yes,
which is that they think the state is in a preeminent danger from particularly street level uprising. That's why I think the police has become such
it's more
an
personal,
issue.
Angelo.
Yeah.
Some people have argued that it's the regime in grave danger, not the state. The state can survive a political uprising on Kampala Road. The state would survive that. The regime may not survive that, and the police.
Do you see a distinction between the two?
There should be a natural distinction. But Emilia, let me come back to
It's
you.
for academic purposes.
You're listening to all these views coming to you. One is that you, as police, the reason crime is getting out of hand is because you invested a lot more in political policing than criminal policing.
But is it true that it has risen beyond control? Well, crime is there, and it was there even before I joined the police. I would still see crimes being committed, and this is not really to say what is happening is normal, it's abnormal. We should have nobody dying at the hands of a criminal. Or if it happens, finding that suspected criminal, trying them under the legal regime, and going for rehabilitation wherever they go. So this happens. Question, is it one-sided failure? Is it the failure of the police whose mandate is clearly spelled out? I don't feel it's the failure of the police. I think it's a whole spectrum of issues that we have to address.
I think, Emilian, NRM really prided itself above everything else in stopping, kind of getting people to respect the state, or deterrence. I think the challenge now is that increasingly there isn't enough deterrence coming from the state for people not to commit crime. So you keep on arresting, and then the prisons are filling up, but there's more crime. So that is the challenge now, that you are not giving enough deterrence, which was a few years back, people felt that the state was there, the LDUs and all these, you would be got. Apparently now people are emboldened to think you can get away with it,
Because the state is no longer doesn't have monopoly of violence. Like I said, justice. Like I'll give you an example. I was trying to bid on a contract. It involves looking into illegal financial dealings. A friend of mine said, I can't. A professional. He told me, Angelo, sadly we cannot participate in this thing because the law and order situation in Uganda is such that even if you're doing honest work, the chances are that the people who come after you will be acting outside the law, and the law can't protect you. That's the feeling that people have. So justice is no longer something that you expect from the state. It has been outsourced. I understand the Monitor has got a story next for tomorrow. Teenagers who are being contracted.
It's in the Sunday Monitor.
Yeah. So teenagers being subcontracted as killers, things like that.
For 50,000 shillings.
Because people are sorting themselves outside the ambit of the law. So in our analysis is that where the pillars of the state, particularly law enforcement and the courts, can no longer be relied upon to provide it's an expectation of justice, that the situation that is created after that is not just ordinary criminality. And I think the police should take some responsibility for this, because if the perception is that you're only a protection force for
the regime,
which is
false.
Then it allows other people.
I'll be surprised if you accepted it to be true.
To fill that void.
Okay, Afande Kaima, there's some messages here, and we'll be opening the lines. But WAF is watching us. Wafulobot is watching us and says, Angelo, do you mean to say that there are no state-inspired rights abuses today? I see little difference between what used to happen under Amin and Obote and now under Museveni. It is just the degree of abuses. That's according to WAF. A viewer here says, people who join the police are not screened well enough. That is why you find criminals in the police. There's another viewer. Jose Nwabin, I believe, is in Kabula. Antonde says, I think there is a direct correlation between criminality, lawlessness, and increasing economic hardships. I believe police must be registering more offenses against property and persons than even offenses against morality. When society's moral fabric breaks, no amount of policing can redeem it. I think that's the point you're trying to argue, that it's not just for the police to answer. There are other players involved in this. There is a listener here, Joshua Inishaka, says, to some extent, the economy is to blame for the insecurity in the country. Because of capitalism, social classes are in a struggle for survival and violence is inevitable. To a larger extent, the politicians are to blame. All focus is put on regime survival other than national security. It's unfortunate that the security organs are jealously fighting like co-wives, fighting for the attention of their husband. Unfortunately, the children are suffering while the polygamous father is silent. Things are falling apart, Charles. I am foreseeing the final collapse of this family called Uganda. Joshua is in Ishaka.
At least there's one husband. so the families can
There's a viewer here who says this, the state of the police competencies is depicted by the poorly facilitated police stations without basics as basic as pens and printers, coupled by overzealous officers and men in uniform whose primary duty is regime entrenchment, leaves the proverbial common man to the mercy of God. I'll take some more messages later. I want to come back to you. When you speak Afande Kaima, I showed you a picture on my phone of the young man who was found murdered this morning in a neighborhood of Kampala, of many other people who are not sure. And you're saying it's not just about us, it's also about what you can do. And people are saying we're trying to do what we can, until you order a curfew and say you must be in your house by 7 o'clock. But even then that doesn't stop.
Which would even be worse.
Yes, which would even be worse. So what is it that you can say to give some assurance to Ugandans that there's someone out there who is having, I know there are many police officers and men and women who are spending sleepless nights trying to keep us safe. But still that doesn't give the confidence that people will be safe.
First, we are here to give a service, to deliver on a mandate. Even with the challenges that do exist, some of which don't emanate from us. As I said, we are ready to give this service. I will give you an example. I read this story of the month that Angel is alluding to. And in one of my articles, I talked about something. Of course, I don't have the powers to do it. It would even be very unpopular. When you look at the street children in our city here in Kampala, you want to ask, where do they go when they grow? Beyond age 5, beyond age 6. Where do they go? Are they absorbed in the community? For what? What skill do they have? Do they even think the community cares about them? Now, if that does not happen, most likely they will end up in crime. So how do we handle them? If we don't, we should be preparing for trouble there ahead.
I hear you on that.
So how do we address that? Do we have the mandate, the capacity to handle that docket? Probably not. So when it begins to happen, to unveil, then the police would be asked why this is not being addressed.
But I thought the police are something like family protection
We
unit
do.
or something.
You know, I mean, these are straight children who don't have.
You have a
families.
legitimate case to get more money to deal with some of this problem, because it's indeed that many families have collapsed socially, and now it's up to the state to save the population from potential future criminals. If they are still young, they should be reformed. And
my suggestion, hopefully somebody read, and I wish they could agree with me. Let's get all of them. We don't even need to try them. Nicholas here will come for us. We get into probably a facility like a university where we place them, and they learn something for probably 2, 3, 4 years. And the state is paying this. So once they come out with a skill,
them police officers.
Million, that's what
the service unit in Kenya recruits.
that's what I would think.
But the remand homes are rehabilitation centers, and they were supposed to do precisely that.
There are only 5 in the country.
There are 5 in the country.
There are only 5
They are
in
not
the country.
effective. But I'm going to throw this out, and then we can discuss it once we come out of the break. You have something called a joint security committee.
Yes,
You have regular discussions.
exactly.
So in as much, and I believe that when you meet with the other security agencies, these are the questions you should be preoccupying yourselves with. You should be trying to find answers. But no one seems to be doing that.
Well, they do, and it's not only joint security committee. They are at different levels. This is a level where the IGP will chair it with other service chiefs. Even at the sub-county level, there is a security committee that discusses issues of the security within that parameter, even up beyond this, where the president will chair or the minister in the absence of the president.
Minister for Internal Affairs, Security?
Internal
Affairs.
Okay.
Where they discuss these issues, and the information is sent, information is received, and we give a service. But failings here and there, yes, they happen. But I don't want to believe that we are in disarray. I don't want to believe that.
You don't?
I don't want to
How would
believe
you
that.
describe the situation in which we are, if you asked?
Well, there is crime. There are waves that come. I'll give you an example. When women were being killed in Nassau,
You used one.
I want to give
you
that.
used one word and said you don't want to believe that we are in disarray.
We are
And I
not.
have asked you, give me a word that describes the situation in which we
there
are.
are challenges that we are interfaced with, which we must continue to interface with and win over.
Okay.
When the IGP went to Nansana to meet some of these women, he met quite many.
I mean, the
And,
prostitutes he met in India.
yes, and the prostitutes came, even in Nansana. They came and said, yeah, we are prostitutes and we are not even secure. He said, but what you are involving in is crime. They said, but what do we do?
But I thought
Nobody cares about us.
I thought there was a discovery that they could be very useful in gathering intelligence, and you're considering a collaboration
I'll
with them.
tell you from really an informed point of view. So he engages them. At some point, the media came out to attack him and say, how can he talk to prostitutes? So he said, what are the issues? Survival. We do not know how we are going to survive. So we have chosen to survive with what we have. They would say hard words than what I have said. So he's perplexed.
Really?
He calls on Operation Wealth Creation. Say, how can you help me to resolve an economic problem that is feeding?
Let's take a break.
It's an economic problem.
Yes, there is.
Let's take a break, and when we come, we're concluding this discussion. Welcome back to this segment of the fourth estate. We're discussing insecurity, but we'll also be
Just die.
trying to broaden the discussion a little bit by talking the politics, and that's where the rally to congratulate the National Resistance Movement 317 MPs in Kivoga today comes in. But let me just pick a few phone calls so that when we go into the political discussion, we'll be able to end the show there. Hello? Hello? The phone line is on your screen. When you call us, kindly turn down the volume on your TV set so that we don't get an echo. Hello? Hello? I'm hoping that caller is either Kanokaka of Agenda or Jeno Kaihura. Hello? Hello? Yes, sir? Your name and where you're calling from?
How are you, sir?
Fine, how are you, sir? Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm talking to Bukenya Grace.
Yes.
To me, I've been watching, and this question will just go straight to Afande Kaima.
Sure.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Afande Kaima, last year, in April, I was arrested and paraded by the IGP at Katwe as the head of the Gambia, a ganga criminal, something that tarnished my name.
Eh? Please, somebody help get that person to ask his question. It's important that he puts his question. He was arrested and paraded as the head of the Bijambia.
UCC
Hello?
has disconnected
Yes. Hello?
Yes, good evening, Charles and the group. How are you?
Good evening, sir. Your name, sir?
I'm called Nyombi Richard Biemaro.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
First of all, Charles, I have one question for Mr. Kaima, but before I ask him that question, I would like to humbly thank NTV
and Sudhir Vyarohanga for the NT Panorama edition of Death is Calling you have broadcasted today. It was heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking, but please, Ugandans, we should kindly come out in numbers and help the people suffering from this nodding disease problem. If you are a Ugandan there and you haven't happened to watch the show, the program, the episode, go on YouTube, on the YouTube. It's there. It's really heartbreaking. Charles, I'm in tears. I've been broken. I really wonder whether this is the country in a 21st century. Anyway, Mr. Kaima, let me ask you one question only.
Yes.
Because my evening is not okay. Where is the boy who was paraded by Mr. Kali Kaihura, Afande Kali Kaihura, to pin politicians for the violence which was going on around Kampala in that time, but instead that boy, said the police was the one behind the iron bar hitmen, and the police was the one providing them security. Where is that boy? Ever since Kaihura paraded him on the cameras, ever since that boy was paraded, and ever since he came out with the truth, he has never been heard. He has never been seen or taken to court or any of that nature. Please, Mr. Kaima, can you elaborate on the whereabouts of that boy? I'm sorry my evening has been ruined by this.
Thank you, Richard. We understand. Thank you. Do you have another caller? Hello? 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 I can hear someone. Yes, sir.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
I am called Robert calling from Mukono.
Yes, please.
I'm called Robert calling from Mukono.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Robert, I think you're watching yourself, you're listening to yourself on your TV. That's why we can't hear you. Hello? Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
Is this NTV?
Yes, please, it is.
Yes, I want to go straight to the show for the set. Regarding Mr. Afande Kaima,
yes.
I'm trying to indicate that the crime in the country is not an issue to the police as entirely, because crime is everywhere in the world. Just recently in the US, they killed over 90 children in a school. That means that Uganda is a third world country. Even if we are having issues of crime, police is trying within a limited budget, but they just need to be supported. Otherwise, we cannot expect 100% crime-free country. That's my and I thank the police
your name,
doing
sir?
their job.
Yes.
And we encourage the funding not to continue.
Your name, sir?
With their work. My name is Enoch Wakabi.
Enoch, thank you. Okay, thank you. I think we need to come back to studio because there are many people trying to get to us. Can we just take that one? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Yes, sir?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Your name, sir?
Oh.
We can hear you. Can you turn down the volume on your TV set?
William, calling from Shema.
Yes, please?
Hello?
Please go ahead with your comment or question.
Hello, can I talk to Nyangole?
No, sir. I'm afraid not. Sorry, we have to lose you.
William.
Hello? I think we lost him. Let's take one other caller. Hello? 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 I think that one is not on. Afande Kaima, most of the questions are coming to you, and then we'll go into the discussion on the
English session.
Then, so you'd have to summarize your answers.
So, this is too really hard for me to answer. What is this boy? I will need to check because in our investigation, in that cattle incident, one young man truly said, we are guarded by people who dress like this one. whether true or not true, the evidence gathered must prove. It's not the words only. All I can do is to cross-check with the case file. What's the status now? Because quite a number were taken to court. Some were given bail. Others were remanded and were not bailed. When I last checked a couple of months back, I need to update myself to know where this one are.
Related to the guy from Katwe, Bukenya, who said he was paraded as the gang leader of Bijambia when he has never been and his name was tarnished.
So which answer does he want from me?
No, basically what he's saying is that you parade the wrong people. You parade the wrong people, and you're not catching the actual criminals.
When I go to communities, certainly I hear these voices. They say, especially when those higher in hierarchy come to, for example, where we have been, that the police will catch the wrong people and they leave the known
criminals.
This is what I said. So when you ask them, do you know who these are? The police can look for them. Again, the missing link comes.
Why do you think people don't trust you?
I don't know whether that's mistrust or it's failure to appreciate the criminal justice system. Even when people see and they know those that have probably committed crimes against them or against those that they know, some of them are a little bit hesitant because they think the justice system either is too cumbersome, you've got to record statements, you've got to go to court to testify, and somehow they don't believe, maybe, this is my thinking from the police perspective, that once these things are not done, then what we call justice will not be done because this suspected criminal will be let to go. There is nobody to give evidence against you. So go.
I think part of the
that's partly what I
why
think.
People don't trust the perception that some of these people are not the right ones. There is a very high propensity by the police to imprison, if I may say. The idea that you could go to a police station and be let free because investigation are still going on doesn't almost happen. You first must go in because investigations are going on. And that alone is traumatizing, and now even if you are eventually given bail or released, there isn't enough confidence that you can take yourself to police and be fairly treated. Many people, when they get to a police station, they know they will be put in the cell. And so either they take off or before they get
the problem with the policing system.
They try to change that.
There's so much propensity to even Luzira and all these prisons are swelling with numbers because there's this addiction to sending people to prison, before the cases are concluded. We have not yet developed the capacity or even attempted to say, let someone be out, let them be monitored, let them appear before police until when they eventually there's enough evidence.
Let's broaden this discussion. In my introduction, gentlemen, I made reference, I alluded to three different incidents, three different developments today. One is the gathering, the celebration of the Constitution Amendment on Article 102B, which happened in December 20th. Removal of the age limits on the presidency, which happened today. The second was the price of fuel, which crossed the 4,000 mark, 4,070 shillings as of today. I want you, Angelo, to try and create the nexus, because if the answers are not coming from the heads of the security agencies, as should be, they should be coming from the political leadership. The political leadership is having a party to celebrate an amendment of the Constitution, and like Enoch says, well, crime happens everywhere, but every country asks its questions to the people they should ask those questions and deal with them the way they're supposed to deal with them. You can't gain comfort in Uganda when people are being killed because people are being raped in South Africa. It doesn't work that way.
And he made reference to
the shooting in
gun violence in America, which has its roots again in that society. And look, the direct nexus is this: law enforcement, the capture of law enforcement for purely political purposes. This is where the crisis is. the state markets this impunity because there is actually people know order from above. They know that there are classes of people who receive different treatment from the police.
Yeah.
For example, wealthy people are treated differently from those who are poor. There's obvious regionalization, ethnicization. If you go on the street, you know, the type of language you speak, you might be treated differently from other people. If you're a member of FDC and other political parties, or you're a political actor, there's a different law for you. And those other ordinary civilians who may not be engaging in activist politics. These messages are given out every other day, that if you are part of a special class, the police will treat you differently. So,
Angelo, just illustrate your point. The police arrested an American accused of, with an arsenal of weaponry they found at his house, apparent domestic abuse, and gave him the VIP seat in the front of the pickup.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of jokes about the other Ugandans who are stuffed under the under the seats.
But two things happen,
Yeah.
And they need to be explained.
let me develop my point.
Before you go off to the American.
Before you set it. So outside on the streets, Ugandans understand that the law enforcement is a very class issue. It's a political issue, and therefore, the majority of people who are involved in basic criminality, home invasions, murders, things that normally police would do, they have no interest in approaching the police because they understand the police serves a particular protection. It's a protection racket. Now, at the political level, what Charles was referring to, the biggest protection racket is protecting the presidency. This has only been the only political project in Uganda the last 25 years. All elections, budgets, and agendas are around creating an encased, solid protection of the presidency, at least under this president. That's why we can make a huge deal about and call 300 and how many MPs?
317.
317 MPs heroes, because I think under the NRM they really consider these people to have done the most important national service, which is, protect the presidency. Now, if that is the only racket in town, of course everything else suffers. My argument, which Charles, maybe we can come and talk about this elsewhere, and it's related to what Joshua said, is that to give Ugandans hope and direction, we have to overcome, we have to transit. And once the transition happens, maybe we'll get to another place. But I fear that the vision of the NRM about the society is wrong. I know Napito believes in private sector and other things. The reason why you have got very low crime in some of the Nordic countries where they are closing prisons is because the social welfare state works. That's a fact. In Uganda, the social welfare state is non-existent. And then NRM...
But you also know that in the Nordic countries, you put an exam that you give to anybody in this country. No one will tell you who the president of Norway is, or the prime minister is, or minister for what is in Norway. Not in Sweden, not in Finland, not in any of those countries, because the politics doesn't matter as much as the systems that run.
It may take forever to get there.
Yes.
I saw a picture of I think the prime minister on his bike going to meet the king, or the queen or something like that. These are some of the countries that we try to admire.
Okay.
The NRM wants to build a society, and I want to say this seriously to those people who are listening. The vision of the presidency is that you can have class struggles, and that in the next 50 years or so, when Uganda is properly in a middle income status, you have a wealthy middle class and a working class that is in harmony. They are not telling the truth that in the process of going there, the social combustion that is taking place that is producing all this crime is a lived reality today. People are obsessed with money in this country. And
Yes,
there is what I call blind and mindless consumerism, and it's largely being marketed by politicians. They buy elections, they pay they have commercialized almost every other thing. Are you surprised then that there are guns for hire on the street? No. There is an obsession with money.
Emilian, let me jump you for a moment and come to Nicholas. The same question really, and we have gentlemen who have very little time to get out of here. Where's the nexus? The same question. Where's the nexus? You have a celebration in Kiboga. You have fuel prices going up. You have crime going up.
Well, I mean, it just tells you this, that the way our politics is aligned is slightly different from the economic priorities of this country. In fact, somebody was making a joke about it and said, you couldn't pay 400 workers of the NRM party, but you're throwing parties by the NRM to celebrate an amendment of the Constitution. It just shows you where, I think there are two things. The point that Angelo had made earlier on in another show, that we have become a praise society, so we care so much about how we look. The biggest expenditure is on outlook. It is projecting a certain sort of popularity, even where it's not the case. And you can see this across, even from ordinary people, that people care so much about how they look and how the public perceives them.
How they consume.
And how they consume, what car is. I went for a wedding meeting lunch today and
published exam results.
I went to a health club today at Silver Springs, and unbeknownst to me, there's actually a vibrant church service there by Watoto, all lined up by ushers in name tags and stuff. And a young man who had gone to school with approaches me and said, "Whose car have you borrowed?" Because I drive a very, dirty small car. He says, no, a lawyer like you must be in a big car. He says, you can see the obsession with outlook. It's the same thing in the NRM party. They are obsessed with projecting strength, while in fact, it might be the contrary in terms of what exists. At least in terms of this amendment, it's not what many Ugandans actually. So what they want to do is project strength, regardless of what the economic realities are. They don't care about even their own workers at this.
Thank you. I'll put the last question to, and then I'll come to Emilian to close. I'll put the last question to Honor. So the referendum has been launched, and you've seen the what do you call them, Angelo? The taglines that are being used. I referred some of them at the beginning of the show. I'll see if I can.
Non-stop.
Yes, 7 non-stop and for
7 over 7.
7 over 7. They're here. Just a moment, they're here. Yes. You have 317 age limit MPs as a hashtag. You have Museveni non-stop. Align and arrive. 7 for all. 7-year presidential term. Yes. It rhymes very well with Museveni.
My view on this has been quite consistent and clear that if you are having creeping insecurity problems, if you are having economic stagnation, there is a direct relationship with obsession with the keeping power through elections, and now lately keeping power through extending the terms. I think instead of wasting time with another referendum, this country needs to free Yoweri Museveni from something called elections, and the hangers-on who are taking advantage of elections to paralyze everything else. So long as he has to worry about elections in 2023, first of all, winning the referendum, though it's a given, you will still have these other paralyses in the delivery of the state. Because there are people who have perfected the art of creating fear that you will lose the election, even when they know that they cannot lose the election. And in the process, all these other things get compromised.
Okay.
So for the sake of the other people who are crying about the security, crying about the economy, just forget about something called elections, so long as Yoweri Museveni is in the picture. Very controversial position, but for me, I count I've made this argument long before the 2016 election. I hope I will make it in 2023.
I thought the person you need to convince is President Museveni himself. Forget about elections.
I don't think he would be averse to no elections, but because people want elections, they will tell him you must win and tell the world that you have won.
Is it people who want the elections or he wants the elections?
I think there are some who want the elections more than him.
Okay, Emilian, I'm coming to you to close this. David in Kisasi says, comprehensive information sharing in many government sectors is not a practice. Even in hospitals, the poor relatives of a patient are most times in the dark, e.g. during a length operation. No updates, and if any, some may be even paying for them. Reports of investigations hardly come out in time, if at all. Military updates are rare. Maybe Uganda police only shares the little they have been allowed to share. If so, Who has the details and who has all these reports of endless investigations?
6,000 unsolved murders. Someone was asking actually what happened to Special Branch. Why was it disbanded?
Special Branch
Was an inconvenience.
It stopped being special. So
should I say transcend?
Huh?
It evolved into crime intelligence. And
It
basically,
evolved.
yes, it did. And we have a directorate of crime intelligence that
I-
follows up this and studies the patterns and feeds into
And
the
director
system.
of crime intelligence, the immediate past director was Joel Aguma.
No, Angelo knows the answer to what happened to Special Branch. So he's just pulling your leg by asking you that question.
Okay.
Please respond to this gentleman. And we end this discussion.
One, it's important that we share information because facts point to a direction. And when we agree with that direction together, then we are going to have a strong partnership. So we would be doing this. Every week we speak to the public through media briefings, again, with a view of explaining certain things as they happen. We need to even do better than that. But basically, for Ugandans, I would ask you, keep close to the police, even when such challenges do exist, because it's your police whose duty is to protect you. When you keep far away, these gaps are exploited by criminal elements within your communities or outside your communities for selfish interests. When I was appointed the public relations officer, I received hundreds of thousands of calls and messages, and some of them point to the very things that you're talking about. You've fallen into things. Which things? What does that mean? When you
Because in a prey society,
yes,
your position you hold is one, that's important.
but the falling into things, my understanding was a little different, and I would ask them what things these are.
In which country do you have a similar high profile for a police spokesperson in the world? Nowhere. I'm telling you,
national
in
TV.
You only occupy a unique position because of the way we are structured. No country in this world that I know of that's well organized has the same profile for the national police spokesperson as you do.
The other day when
Think about it. You are almost as important in the minds of the Ugandan public as a member of cabinet. That's how they look.
That's another one.
That's how they look. Wow.
The other day, the head of defense of South Africa said, possibly President Zuma doesn't even know his name, doesn't know him, because he's not involved in appointing him.
Okay.
Doesn't. But if you can just say your concluding word and we get out of here, time is out.
It's important. Tomorrow, as the force, we are going to sit and deliberate many things, including some of these things that we are raising in terms of delivering on our mandate. And the minister will be there to launch. Now I'm steering
Another launch.
To launch the activities that must be done to close these gaps that are not giving the best security Ugandans would want. And part of this,
international, one of the activities is called taking responsibility and stepping.
Is he launching that as well?
That's
Stepping
one
down.
of the best things you can do for yourself and for society.
Partly that's what we do in-house, to look at these and apportion responsibility, take responsibility, and move forward in protecting Ugandans. This is our mandate, and this is our country. If we don't do it, then who is going to do it? Because we took oath to do it.
Well, gentlemen and viewers, if someone is called the Minister of Internal Affairs, someone is called IGP, someone is called Director General of Internal Security and others, and so many Ugandans die or disappear under your watch, and you haven't given a consistent answer or an explanation, in other polities, what Honor is suggesting happens. In this country,
that's why everyone thought IGP was resigning.
when he called that press conference last week.
And he was dressed in such a ceremonial manner.
I saw so many messages.
It looked so cool.
Okay, let me just take
They told lies that we had called it.
Let me take a last message that will help us close the show. Speaking to what you spoke to, Honor, someone says police should be part of the solution to crime reduction than just acting as a reactionary force.
Correct.
that that very suggestion by my good friend Afande Kaima about taking suspects and proven criminals to training centers should have been yesterday. These centers should everything the police uses, from uniforms, boots, tents, food, to shoe polishing, yes, should be included as part of your planning. Uganda Police should contribute to reduction in crime via employment by voluntary employment, enrollment, and coercion of those hardcore criminals. Much of Uganda's crime is due to unemployment. Thanks. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much to you, all our viewers. I want to start with Honor Peter Komolo. Thank you very much. Nicholas Opio, thank you very much. Fande Emilian Kaima, thank you very much. And Angelo Izama.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much to you, all our viewers, for joining us tonight and always, and especially those of you who called us and each one who watches the show. This debate continues on our social media platforms, and you can continue to watch the show. There will be a replay of the show, a replay of the show, I think on Wednesday in the afternoon, but also a YouTube video is always uploaded for you to watch and continue the debate on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and on Twitter to debate some of these issues. From me, it's a good night.